Good evening. So yesterday I made a video talking about becoming a French citizen, and I wanted to make a video today talking about how I became fluent in French and some tips to do so. However, yesterday I was a bit overboard with the time. I think I went to over 20 minutes. So I'm gonna set a time on my watch right now so that when 6 minutes is up, I'm gonna cut it short. That way we can keep it nice and short this time. And I'm also going to look at the camera while I'm speaking to you this time, because yesterday I was looking, at the image instead of the directly at the camera. So this is new for me making videos, and I hope to make more as time goes by. So bear with me, and hopefully over time I'll get better as well. So talking about learning French, I actually, I've had experience learning a foreign language and becoming fluent in that language twice now. I've had I've been fortunate enough to be able to live abroad twice. At 19 years old, I moved to Beijing, China, and studied there and worked there for a year and a half. And my goal while I was living there really was to master Chinese to the best of my ability with the time I had. So for a year and a half, I really immersed myself in that Chinese bubble. And I think that's probably the first point I want to talk to you guys today, is for those of you who are have the fortune of being able to live abroad, because that's obviously the best way to learn a language, is to live in the country where that language is spoken. And my piece of advice would be immerse yourself, because as I said, in China I immersed myself for a year and a half in the Chinese language. And likewise with French, I moved to France in 2012, and for the first 2 or 3 years, with exceptions, I didn't completely cut myself off from the English-speaking circles. I still had a good time with friends and whatnot, but for the most part, my everyday tasks were in French. I was listening to French music day and night. I was studying French, reading French novels, watching French movies, watching television shows, even American television shows that I liked in French with French subtitles. So I guess my big piece of advice is to immerse yourself in the language. If you're living in the country, you should have an even easier time. But if you're not, there's still ways around that. You can still, in your spare time, in your free time, to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Listening to music in that language, watching movies in that language, speaking with friends in that language if you have friends that are French, for example, and you're living in the US. So that would be my first piece of advice. And people ask me oftentimes when they hear me speaking French, they said, did you speak French already before you came to France, or did you have, were you already speaking French? And that's a yes and no answer from my end, because I had started studying French since the 8th grade formally. I was already pretty interested in French as of 9-10 years, even though I didn't pursue anything at that time. I already had the interest that had developed. So I had 6 or 7 formal years of education under my belt of French, and I thought before I got to France, I was feeling pretty confident. Oh, in a month or two I'll be fully fluent, and I'm going to be speaking like a French person. And so when I arrived in August 2012, I was in for a bit of a wake-up call, because I quickly realized, despite the fact that I had a pretty good base as far as reading and writing went, my spoken level of French was nowhere near where it needed to be. And especially with the speed with the speed that the French speak, and a lot of the vocabulary that you just don't learn oftentimes in the classroom. So I had to get used to the speed. I had to get used to a lot of vocabulary that I hadn't learned, a lot of informal vocabulary, and that was a big challenge. So that motivated me even more to really immerse myself in the language while living here. Especially for the first 2 or 3 years, I really made an effort to only speak French and to avoid English as much as possible. It's been 6 years and some change now that I'm in France. So the past few years I've been a little bit more laid back. I speak French every day for work. My girlfriend's French. We speak French probably 70% of the time, and that 30% has really grown, because the 30% of the time we speak English, because for the first few years when we were dating, we only spoke French, and I decided, I need a bit of a break. The first 4 years I was only speaking French day and night, so I thought to myself, I really want to start speaking English again, and I thought at the same time I really want to help my girlfriend improve her English. And since then we speak quite a bit of English, probably 30 or 40% of the time we speak in English, and it's helped her English improve greatly, and it's given me a chance to get a break from speaking French every day. So immerse yourself in the beginning, and once you become fluent, then you can kind of relax a little bit, and you don't have to immerse yourself 100% of the time in the foreign language that you're learning. And another question I get oftentimes is, well, how long did it take you to get fluent? And for that, I'll give another, not a specific answer, because there's different levels of fluency. And I would say after the first 10 months living in France, I was fluent in the sense that I was thinking in the language and I was dreaming in the language. And those two things, when you're thinking in the language and you're dreaming in the language, for me, you are a fluent speaker. And that's not to be confused with speaking it perfectly, because you're thinking in the language, you're dreaming in the language, but it doesn't necessarily mean, and it's clearly you're not thinking perfectly, you're not dreaming perfectly. But the fact that you're no longer needing to speak in your mother tongue in your head and then translate word for word what you're saying is already a great sign that you're attaining fluency. And that for me is the beginning. That's the beginning of fluency for me. That's the entry level. Yes, I'm a fluent speaker of said foreign language. Now, when I would say probably after that's starting to ring, so I'll wrap it up. 6 minutes goes by quickly. So I would say after 2 years in France, 2014, I felt really confident, really comfortable with telling anybody I speak fluent French. Not perfect French. Once again, my French will never be perfect because I'll always have an accent. I'll always have good days and bad days speaking French. But I would say after the 2-year mark living in France and immersing myself day in and day out, that I was really fully fluent. And for me, that means you have a C1 level, upper B2, lower C1 level. You can look online if you're not familiar with the European scale of language levels. So your thoughts are coming to you quickly. You're able to debate with people. You're able to express yourselves in a variety of subjects, and even some subjects that you don't necessarily master. And nevertheless, you're able to find your words, and even if you're missing some technical words because of the lack of mastery of a certain conversation, you're able to express yourself using other words within the context to make yourself understood. So for me, that's the upper level when you start arriving at the upper level of fluency. And I think after 2 years, there's no reason why someone cannot attain such a high level of fluency. But again, it takes a lot of time, a lot of determined effort, and a lot of efficient studying, a lot of efficient, immersion in the language. So, well, I'll leave it there because I've already gone over the 6-minute limit I'd set myself, and I hope that helped answer some questions. And please do subscribe and leave your questions in the comments below, and I'll be glad to maybe shed some light in another video on the subject, or answer you directly in the comments. So, yeah, drop a comment, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.